Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. In my past videos, I've talked about many of the scandals as well as weaknesses that Mark Carney has as a politician and why I suspect that he will make for a very weak Liberal Party leader. And I've also talked about the polling weakness that I think the Liberals still have with Mark Carney as leader, both regionally and with certain demographics. Today, what I want to talk about, now that Mark Carney is the Liberal leader and soon to be Prime Minister, what the Liberals are actually going to run on in the next federal election. Because I think right now in Liberal HQ, they think that they have set themselves up to be able to win the next federal election. Again, despite Mark Carney's lack of charisma, he's an extremely boring person with a lot of scandals, as well as their polling still being pretty weak. They think that they're set up. But I guarantee in the next couple of days, it's going to set in crap. We don't actually have anything to run on. And that's my opinion on how this next federal race is going to go. The Liberals have a lot of attack lines that they've been trying to use on Pierre Poilievre and the Americans, but you actually still have to run on something. I keep hearing that the federal election could be called next week, although we've been hearing that for 2 years. Oh, it's right around the corner. Everyone's being told to print up your literature and get your signs ready because there's about to be a federal election, and then it never happens. And I'm skeptical that it would happen next week because Mark Carney hasn't done anything yet. Does he really want to be the guy introducing himself as prime minister only on the campaign trail, or is he going to want at least a couple of months to get people kind of comfortable with the idea he's prime minister before pulling the trigger? Because if I'm a liberal advisor, I would say, Mark, you got to have at least one or two policy achievements before you trigger the next election. A main platform plank of his, in fact, was that he was going to get rid of the carbon tax. He still supports the carbon tax, and it's kind of a farce that he's getting rid of it. Really, you just reorganize how it's paid for, move it from a consumer carbon tax to being an industrial carbon tax, in which it would still have the exact same effect on prices and the economy in general. But he hasn't gotten rid of it yet. So, what is he going to run on the idea that he might get rid of it? Because that's not good politics. This is why Blaine Higgs lost in New Brunswick for the provincial election. Blaine Higgs was a great premier. Honestly, probably one of the best premiers since Ralph Klein in the country, because the guy actually balanced a budget in the Maritimes, which is impressive, and he had set himself up to cut taxes. But instead of cutting taxes and running on the fact he cut taxes, instead Blaine Higgs ran on the fact that he will cut taxes if he wins again, and it's only like a 2% HST cut, in which I say, who cares? That is not a big cornerstone. That is not like a big keystone policy to any platform. And so right now, the Liberals don't have any achievements. What are they going to run on universal dental care? Nobody actually thinks it's been a success. The Housing Accelerator Fund, everyone understands that housing has actually been very sluggish in its rate of increase. In fact, the amount of houses being built each year have been going down for 3 years straight now. Crime's terrible. The economy overall is not very good. Immigration's out of control. They don't have anything to actually run on in terms of a policy achievement, and it just seems like a slap in the face to Canadians then to swap out Trudeau with Carney and then trigger an election and say, vote for this guy. He's not the last guy. But anyways, now I want to get into what I think the actual Liberal strategy is right now. And, spoiler alert, I am a conservative, but I don't think it's going to work because nobody votes for the person who's just attacking other people. Attacks work, but you have to follow up an attack with a proper alternative. Here's our alternative policy, and they don't even attack Poilievre or the conservatives' policies. They're just attacking them, and that just seems childish. But anyways, before I get into this next segment, guys, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that wonderful stuff. And now let's get into the latest attack where they're trying to say that Pierre Poilievre is an evil, evil, bad man because he is associated in some vague way with Donald Trump, despite the fact that Donald Trump has said Poilievre is not MAGA and has attacked him before. Here is a 7-second clip. Yes, 7 seconds that the Liberals have posted to their own X account. This was on March 11th, yesterday. And it says, Pierre Poilievre won't stand up to Donald Trump, and Trump's friends know it. The only Mark Carney will stand against Donald Trump. And by the way, Ben Shapiro is not Donald Trump's friend. It's not because they hate each other, but not everyone who's an American political commentary is Trump's friend. They had to clip this deeply out of context. in order to make it seem like Pierre Poilievre is saying that, or sorry, that Ben Shapiro is saying that Pierre Poilievre will give Trump Canada or whatever.
Are you going to get more from Canada with Pierre Poilievre as the prime minister than you're going to get from Mark Carney? The answer is yes.
Now, this is how thin the Liberals' attack line on Pierre Poilievre has gotten. It's gone past, they've had to go a little bit further past just saying Trump's name and Poilievre's name and showing that they sometimes use extremely common words together, as if, like, you know, Pierre Poilievre can say fake news and Trump can say fake news, and that for some reason associates the two like deeply. But that 7-second clip made it sound like Ben Shapiro is saying that Trump can extract more gains out of Pierre Poilievre. He can rip away Canada's sovereignty. He's going to sell them Manitoba just for the fun of it. That's obviously not what was being said. What Ben Shapiro was saying is basically, if you want a better partner in NATO to work for, a better partner on border security, and a better partner when it comes to free trade, you'll want Pierre Poilievre. In fact, this was a clip that, if you actually watch the full version, at the very start of that segment that where Shapiro was talking about Canada, he immediately starts talking about why it's foolish that Donald Trump is pursuing tariffs without any clear end goal.
Again, if there's a deliverable, great, and force Canada to the wall to get the deliverable. However, all of this is having an impact on domestic politics in Canada. So,
and I'm gonna cut to a little bit later, but he's been very critical over the past few days that what Trump's doing is just artificially raising prices for American consumers with no real clear thing he wants from Canada. Because even as somebody who understood that we have poor border security and poor defense spending in this country, even Trudeau did commit to actually starting to spend it and has started demonstrating that we are putting money towards the border. That is where it's becoming a little bit irrational, where for some reason they're getting into trade fights with Canada over very vague issues. Like, yes, we do tariff certain products. And if the Americans said, please stop tariffing American dairy, please stop tariffing American cheese, American softwood, and all that stuff, then we would be having a conversation. But that's not what's going on. So both sides are just talking past each other. But then we also have the ridiculous farce of like of Canadian politicians and premiers thinking they can stand up to the Americans and then immediately caving every 5 seconds because it turns out Canada's economy is weak, not because of the US, those dirty Americans, but because we have high taxes and high regulations. That's why Doug Ford, in less than 24 hours, had to cave to Donald Trump on the 25% electricity tariffs that Doug Ford was going to put on the Americans for importing Ontario electricity. It didn't work out because Ontario is deeply indebted and the taxes are too high. So trying to get into a trade conflict with the US means that Ontario goes bankrupt first every time, and probably goes bankrupt first months in advance of the Americans going bankrupt, if not years. But here is Ben Shapiro later on in that clip giving a little bit more of the context that, you know, what you really want, if you are a true conservative in America, you should want a true conservative running Canada. It has nothing to do with America gobbling up Canada.
Of the year, Pierre Poilievre was ahead 20 points in the election polls. Today, he is tied with the Liberals. So are you going to get more from Canada with Pierre Poilievre as the prime minister than you're going to get from Mark Carney? The answer is yes. And it turns out that politics has a lot of downstream effect.
And yeah, so nowhere in this clip does he in any way endorse tariffs. Does he endorse hurting Canada? In fact, Ben Shapiro wants Canada to be more self-sufficient, in the sense that not be a government that is like in the sense that it's like a free market economy that isn't reliant on subsidies, and we can trade freely between the two countries and strengthen each other. That is literally his position. And Mark Carney, like, wanting the opposite of that, or the Liberals basically opposing what Ben Shapiro is saying, is basically saying that they want less free trade and they want more autarky. By the way, I need to cut to this. Thank you for the pleb reporter for posting this. But he showed that when Mark Carney was at this ridiculous event in a steel mill, by the way, guys, political optics, have him stand outside the steel mill, maybe have him wear a helmet without the overalls. Never make a guy look like this. This reminds me of, what was his name? Dukakis running in the 88 U.S. presidential election, wearing that stupid helmet while driving around in the tank. All of you probably over the ages of 45 will know what I'm talking about. I just happen to know it because I'm 25 going on 86. But he looks like this, and he has this like little talk he's doing about trying to defend our steel manufacturers and producers from the Americans. It's 3 minutes and 29 seconds. I'm not sure if it was specifically the pleb who came up with this or he just reposted it, but out of this 3 minute and 29-second clip, there are 42 seconds of him just saying and not knowing what to say. I'm not sure what's pausing here a lot.
Point. Trump's.
This guy needs a teleprompter to survive. We don't need to sit through all 42 seconds of that. But goodness, the man is worse off teleprompter than Barack Obama was. He has no ability to actually speak from the heart. Maybe he doesn't have a heart or a soul, who knows. But this is also why I'm pretty confident that on a debate stage, he would get bulldozed by Pierre Poilievre, and not in the sense that Pierre Poilievre is going to talk over him and outmuscle him and basically be a jerk or something like that. I've never perceived that as Pierre Poilievre's style as much as the liberals and the media like to pretend he's a bully. He's insistent on points, and we've already seen Poilievre and Carney debate in parliamentary committees. Carney is just an equivocating fool. He never has actually much of a point. He just basically always wants to change subjects every time something gets uncomfortable. Poilievre can actually stand and fight. This guy can't even get through a very easy press conference where he's just basically saying, we support Canadian steel workers and the industry, and we're going to use some of our retaliatory tariffs to prop up the steel industry. In fact, also, we shouldn't be putting on retaliatory tariffs at all, and that's not because I lack patriotism and I want Canada to get enveloped by the Americans. Is that we will beat the Americans by just lowering our taxes and regulations. That's all. That's all we need to do to win. And when he's leaving this steel plant event, it is, again, also telling that the man is taking no questions. He does his scripted event, then he walks away. It's because he got absolutely nothing to say. He is not fast on his feet, and his entire leadership campaign, banning people like me from his events, banning other independent media, is very telling at his current position. By the way, this is something I want to talk about quickly before I end this video off. Maybe I'll talk about one other thing too. Frank Graves and EKOS are still bad pollsters. And I need to quickly make fun of this because there are actually people who believe these numbers. Look at this unbranded. Hot off the press from EKOS. Poilievre has officially tanked. Carney is ascendant. And this poll had the Liberals at 47% and the Conservatives at like 32, or yeah, 48 and 31.5. No. Guys, Frank Graves is clinically insane. If you think any party would be at 47% right now or 48, you would be insane. Maybe if Trudeau was still around, the Conservatives could achieve something like that. But this is a competitive election. I just made a video on innovative research showing that the Conservatives are 10 ahead. That doesn't mean every pollster is showing that, but I find innovative and Abacus tend to be the most consistent with their numbers because, guys, guess how polling tends to work? Unless there is some big, massive, shocking issue or scandal, polling goes like this. Goes very slowly. And sometimes if there's a shock, you'll jump up and then we'll start coming down again because the shock is over. When the polls go up and then they keep going up and then they keep going up, and there's nothing in the news cycle to even suggest that this is how the general public is feeling and we're all moving in one direction because, we don't like the Conservatives now for some reason. There's nothing that anti-conservative in the public right now. That's just not how things move. Here's a great example from Polling Canada. They posted this. I think they believe the polls, but look, Polling Canada says Atlantic Canada, Canada's last 4 polls, and innovative is here proving my point. We have Leger that shows the Liberals at 56 in Atlantic Canada, the Conservatives at 28, the NDP at 10, the Greens at 4, and the PPC at 2. Innovative has the Conservatives leading just by 1 point, 42 to 41. Nanos 57 to 27 for the Liberals. EKOS 58 to 29 for the Liberals. Yeah, that's not realistic. Again, I don't feel like I need to tell you this is not how polling works. And Innovative Research, back in the day, literally 2 months ago, every pollster had the Conservatives at 52 or 48%. Do I believe that's where the Conservatives are now? Definitely not. Trudeau is gone, and many Liberals who are completely writing off the next election have returned. So naturally, they've come up a little bit, and some of the more like the very liberal conservative supporters who only left because they hated Trudeau, some of them are going back liberal. So things has equalized a bit. So the Conservatives have lost about 6 or 7 points in Atlantic Canada, and probably the Liberals have gained maybe 5 or 6 points. So now they're kind of neck and neck now. That is realistic. Do you think the Conservatives went from 52 to 26 in like a month? No, that's not how public opinion works. Actually, I want you to see if I can find this video, because people will sometimes accuse me of like, Wyatt, you're just trying to cherry pick polls that you like. I'm consistent with which polls I like. I'm even willing to say after Leger had a plus 13 for the Conservatives, that I will throw that one out and they get to sit in the corner of shame, because when they show plus 3 Conservatives, then plus 13 Conservatives, and then tie, that's not realistic. And now I can't even believe that plus 13. But you have people like Frank Dominic out there pretending that this EKOS poll might be realistic. This is truly the definition of wish casting. There is nothing in reality to make you believe that this is actually realistic. But people are saying, but what if? But what if this is how it's going?
A new federal poll puts Mark Carney's Liberals at 48% of the vote to the Conservatives' 31%. And this poll was actually taken down because the pollster was concerned that it wouldn't be accurate.
Yeah, because it's not accurate. Somehow Frank Graves accidentally released his fever dream polls that he loves so much, rather than the ones he just, more gently scuffs to make it look like the Liberals have a good trend line. They did not jump 20 points ahead.
For perspective, this is the electoral map after Justin Trudeau's 2015 win. He had about 40% of the vote. And this is what the map would look like with the current polling. The NDP would be obliterated, as would the Bloc, and the Liberals would win 249 seats. This would beat out Brian Mulroney's record with 211 seats. This is probably not going to happen, but this...
No. You can't say... Okay, Frankie boy. You can't say this probably isn't going to happen. This is not going to happen. Why is the Bloc falling apart? Why would they fall apart in your mind, Frank? You can't... And the problem is this guy makes videos on TikTok for like teenagers and very young adults who don't know any better, when he says the pollster took it down because this might not be accurate. He's making it sound like he's just not confident in this one, but it could be right, but that's only like a 10% chance. No, there is a 0% chance this could be right. There's a lot of people who really like Poilievre, regardless of what the Liberals are doing. There are some people who genuinely like Mark Carney. I have not met any of them, but I've been assured that people like him. But even as bad as Jagmeet Singh is a leader, he's not getting 1 seat. You think Leah Gaston's going to lose? Do you think Nikki Ashton's going to lose? No. There are very safe NDP seats where they could run an orange as their candidate and they would win just because of color recognition alone. That's the problem. But you have these guys on TikTok who, again, would attack me for saying that I like Abacus and Innovative Research better than the other pollsters, and I have good reason to. But they'll fart out this kind of a video and be like, well, there's a chance this could happen. Really? There's a chance the NDP is going to get 0, the Greens will get 1, and the Bloc will get 1? No. Oh, yeah, the Liberals are going to get their best result ever. Totally.
This is insane. Other pollsters like Nanos put the Liberals and the Conservatives tied at both like 37%. Even in that scenario, it would still end up being a Liberal majority. That's mainly because the Conservative vote is so concentrated in places like Alberta, where the Liberal vote is spread out across British Columbia, Quebec, and Ontario. And specifically in Quebec and Ontario, with the collapse of the NDP, the Liberals would be picking up a ton of seats. And if the Liberals go a few...
The problem is the NDP would have to collapse under 10% of the vote to actually truly give all their seats over, because there are seats where the NDP will win 60% of the vote. That's the problem. How hard do you have to collapse to lose a seat that you used to win by 60%? That is like Nikki Ashton's seat and a lot of the Winnipeg seats. That's just not realistic.
Points higher, they start taking seats from the Bloc as well. What do you think the results of the next election are going to be for the Liberals and the Conservatives? I think we're going to see about 43% for the Liberals and 35% for the Conservatives.
That's because, Frank, you're delusional. That's because you shouldn't be teaching in the province of Ontario, because you don't know what you're talking about on every issue I've seen you talk about. No, 43 for the Liberals and 35 for the Conservatives. So the Conservatives, with Pierre Poilievre at the helm, would, in your mind, do 1% better than O'Toole, even without the PPC being any competition this time, because they're so poorly managed and they don't have COVID to buoy their numbers. And again, Poilievre hasn't really done anything that would embarrass himself and push voters towards a more right party. And he's only going to get 35. But the Liberals, who got 40% of the vote in 2015, I believe that was what they got, 2015 Canadian election. I just want to check my numbers here, guys. So Justin Trudeau, he didn't even get 40. He got 39.47% of the vote in 2015, but he won a majority since the Conservatives only got 31.9, and that ended up squeezing them out a lot of the seats. So I just checked that. So the Liberals under Mark Carney, after 10 years of a lot of voter fatigue plaguing the Liberals in the 2019 and 2021 elections, even when they were running against someone as weak as O'Toole, they still couldn't pull out a majority because people are getting sick of them. And now, with a bad economy, bad crime rate, bad drug issues, bad national security policy, rampant anti-Semitism, rampant mass immigration, bringing in like flat-out tribal warfare in certain parts of the country, now the Liberals are going to achieve one of their best results ever. No, they're not. Like, could the Liberals win? Sure, that's possible. Is it realistic? Not really, unless you're considering the Conservatives only getting a minority a win. Maybe then I give you like 70% shot the Conservatives get a majority, 20% they get a minority, and like I give you an off 10% chance the Liberals achieve some sort of a government. Because anything can happen on the campaign trail. The Conservatives aren't exactly 50 points ahead. So yeah, things could tighten up, and the way that the votes ring out in different regions could end up giving the Liberals a minority. But no, I hate this kind of commentary where somebody pulls up a poll. I am not a polling analyst and like a polling expert. That is Chris from the Great Canadian Bagel podcast, people like Brian Burgay, people like Sharia Teest. Those guys are very good with polling. By the way, he even cited Sharia Teest's model for what that EKOS poll would result in. Sharia Teest has been mocking relentlessly Frank Graves and EKOS because of how bad their polling is. And by the way, I'm going to have to tap the sign, guys. This is an actual post by Frank Graves saying, a real conservative option is a healthy counterbalance in a healthy democracy. Pierre Poilievre is an acolyte of authoritarian populism. This is never healthy. You are on notice, going to make sure you are never going to lead my country. I don't make idle threats, in which the threat seemed somewhat idle because he then deleted that post. But yeah, Frank Graves is not credible. In fact, he left the polling industry in 2021, and since then he has just been an internet troll trying to hurt conservatives. His 2021 result, he pretends like he was somewhat close to the actual overall result. Honestly, no, this video is going to turn into me dunking on Frank Graves here. Again, I'm not a polling expert, but I am going to believe my lying eyes and ears. And when I see him get a massive result off, I'm going to call it out. So in 2021, somehow this bald man still gets the most of the popular vote, Aaron O'Toole. He gets 33.7. Trudeau gets 32.62. And, Bloc 7.64. The NDP gets 15.9 or not 17.82. Yeah, and whatnot. I want to go to the polls down here. I want to look at the last EKOS poll and show you that, no, they are not right. So this is the last EKOS poll. He says 32.6% Liberal. And for the longest time, Frank Graves has hung his hat on the fact that he was technically right that the Liberals would get 32.6. The problem is he got the Conservatives wrong by over 6 points. He got the NDP a little bit off. That one was a bit more clear. But the thing is that he got the Greens off by 1.6, not as bad. And he got the PPC massively off. He thought they were going to get 9.9% of the vote. This is not a good poll. You cannot, dude, if I got you to just guess what all of the 5 biggest parties were going to get, especially the conservatives and liberals, because it tends to be pretty easy to predict which one, like where each of the parties are at if you just vaguely look at other polls and the attitude of the country. If you just pull numbers out of your head, you could probably guess a few of them right. Frank Graves is saying that because he guessed the liberals' poll number right, that means their election result right. That means he's a good pollster. No, Frank is a terrible pollster. Getting the liberals right and the conservatives off by more than 6% is the entire election. If Frank Graves' poll was right, the PPC would have won some seats, the liberals would have a massive majority, and the conservatives would have fallen below like 70 seats. No, he's a bad pollster. Just saying. Anyways, so that is it for me today here, guys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, especially if your friends are conservatives with anxiety that Mark Carney could win. I feel like I am a calming voice of reason that no, common sense usually still prevails at the end of the day. When conservatives lose elections, there's usually a better reason than Donald Trump said something about tariffs and everyone set their hair on fire. I think at the end of the day, domestic issues are king, and most of people are going to vote on the crime on their street, or if they can actually afford a home, or how high their taxes are, and other stuff like that. So anyways, that's it for me, guys. See you later.